Hello, everyone.
Hi, Troy.
Hello.
My name is Troy, and I am one of the co-founders of SacTown. And I recently traveled to Amsterdam and India, but that's a separate story. And if you want to talk to me about my experience in India, we have a post-hangout meeting at Oscars. There's. Oh God. Okay. Let's try not to mess this up. I burnt thousands of gallons of fossil fuels and traveled thousands of miles to go across the world. I had to take pictures, and I had to constantly think about strong towns while I was in Amsterdam. I wish that, I hope that you guys will appreciate some of the photography that I took while I was there. Okay, so pop quiz, or people can help guess. What on arrival do you think is the mode of transit I use to get from the airport to my hostel?
Bike.
I biked with all my luggage. Nobody says Uber yet? Waymo? I don't think there's Waymo in it.
Yeah.
I took, down is next. Okay. I took the train, and I can't express enough how fast and convenient the train is, and I won't get too far into it, but I guess in one short sentence, I will describe it as, in all the times I took the train in the Netherlands, I never had to wait. I never actually had to wait for the train. So that was really remarkable. Closer? Okay. Okay, so here's what the outside of the train station looks like in Amsterdam Central Station, and just the first thing I was just hit with is just this sudden feeling of calm, because there were no cars anywhere in the central station. It was so just quiet and peaceful, and something that I could not have predicted. The outside of the train station is this sort of very ornamental, very beautiful old building, probably hundreds and hundreds of years old. One thing that's interesting about it is that it tells time, but it also tells wind direction, which I think pays homage to the Dutch maritime culture. Here is me and a bunch of my coworkers. We all went to India, and then some of us came with me to Amsterdam, so this is kind of like our retreat. And then I also met up with an old friend who currently lives in Germany, and so he just came over to visit. So it was kind of like a reunion for a lot of people that I normally don't see in person. Okay, some first impressions about Amsterdam is that it is just absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful. It is so quaint everywhere, and just so peaceful and calm, but also exciting when you want it to be exciting. The architecture is obviously very nice, but it's really a backdrop. In Amsterdam in particular, it's like a backdrop for all these canals that go all over the city. These canals, I think it's like 60 miles or more of canals, and there's over 100 of these small bridges. A lot of them are only footbridges. Very cool. Also, the city is just really, really old. The city itself was like, incorporated 750 years ago. And so it actually shows in some of these buildings that where their foundations are starting to crumble, because that's just how old this place is. Obviously, first impression, a lot of bikes everywhere, and I'm going to get into that later, but yeah, just instantly right out the train station, this is what you see, just like bike lanes and cyclists everywhere. There are boats, and the canal system used to be built for moving freight and goods, food, and things like that, but now not so much. We use trucks for that mainly, but there's still a good amount of tour boats. Amsterdam, even in the most sort of dark and dingy of places in central Amsterdam, even in the red light district, even in the places where I literally was asked if I wanted to buy cocaine, I never felt the safest as compared to anywhere in the world. Even the person was like, okay, you don't want to buy cocaine? And he just walked away. And maybe I will next time. A lot of lights everywhere. Like everywhere I felt really well lit. Even cycling, I didn't feel like I needed to use a bike light, which was interesting. And as I approached my hostel for check-in, I was literally met with a warm welcome. And I mean, this street is called Vamstraat, so when they put up this welcome sign, it literally means it says warm welcome. So I just thought that was interesting. And then my hostel that I visited, and I stayed for 4 or 5 days, and you can even tell the building itself is only 2 windows wide, and I'm going to get into the width and shape of the buildings at a later part of this. Okay, section 1. Put cars in their place. This is a quote from Jeff Speck's book, Walkable Cities. And this phrase, in Jeff Speck's, would summarize it as that cities should not feel afraid of allocating spaces for people where cars are not allowed, right? Cars don't need to literally be allowed everywhere in the entire city. And this is exemplified by these retractable bollards right in front of my hostel. These are those right there. And these bollards can retract in the case of emergency for access for emergency response vehicles. And bollards come in every shape and form. They even block out. I would say probably about a third of all the bridges were blocked by bollards, and so these were reserved spaces only for people on foot or on bicycles. Here's a sign that was very common, even in places where there were no bollards. There still would often be signs that say only cyclists and motorists allowed. This would be the interpretation, is that there's no entry allowed except for bicycles. And then this other icon is a moped. I'll talk about mopeds later also. Mopeds are really interesting. Here's an example of a town square that used to allow cars, and now it's the town square is bisected by a bicycle-only street and a transit-only street. And another reason I wanted to show this picture was because there's all these trucks and utility vehicles in the background, and I think it's important to emphasize that when we say the phrase ban cars, actually that's a bit of an extreme statement. What we actually mean is ban discretionary use of vehicles. Discretionary means that only when they're needed. So in this case, these trucks are helping to unload materials used for a Christmas market. Okay, section 2. Small utility vehicles, but mostly cargo bikes. And these was something that I was kind of blown away by. I knew that there was a lot of cargo bike use in Amsterdam, but this was just out of this world, and seeing it in person is a different story. Tour boats used cargo bikes to resupply. Catering companies used cargo bikes. General purpose couriers making general deliveries used cargo bikes. And these ones in particular are this model of cargo bike, the Bullet, is close to my heart because I actually own one and I use it for strong SacTown all the time. And so seeing another Bullet in the flesh is just like this. I was just so excited when I saw it. I almost never see Bullets in the US. Seafood restaurants use seafood-specific delivery couriers that use seafood-specific cargo bicycles. And DHL and FedEx International Deliveries use cargo bikes. This one's really interesting. I saw a bunch of these DHL cargo bike deliveries, but I looked up later and I found out that they're actually unloaded from boats. They actually load up the international deliveries onto a boat, then they load them into cargo bikes inside the boat and use a ramp to get them up, and then go throughout the city.
Was that a double seat one?
No, that's just 2 next to each other. Okay, paper mail, postal service. They use bikes. I saw probably 30 or 40 of these guys going around making deliveries. And then moving on from bikes, something that I think was probably the most substantial to me and the most important to me was seeing fire stations have small utility vehicles parked outside. These little guys, for access in places where there's narrow streets or there's bollards in the way and things like that. This is so important to me because in the US, vehicle size almost always dictates the street width, especially when it comes to the fire department having veto power over traffic engineering departments. And always well, I'm not going to get too much into it, but yeah, the point is that in Amsterdam, the street width dictates the size of the vehicle, not the other way around. Okay, so when it comes to moving your body, moving yourself, obviously there's the bicycle, but not everyone rides a bicycle in Amsterdam, if you can believe it. When it comes to small personal vehicles, a lot of people get around with mopeds, okay? But What if you can't balance on two wheels? What if moped is too large because you're too young, or what if you're too old and you don't have vision and you can't hold a driver's license? There are alternatives. There are also mopeds. These are all mopeds in the eyes of the law. They happen to have four wheels, but they are legally mopeds. They just have to be below a certain size and weight. Now, these ones are cars. They just are just above the threshold and they have to be classified as cars. But what's the advantage of a moped? Even though it has four wheels, it only requires you to be at 14 years old, which means that you can, like 2 or 3 years ahead of when you can drive a car, you can obtain a driver's license for a moped. It's a different class of license, at least in the Netherlands. And so that sort of extends the usefulness of motorized vehicles to a younger age. But also it's just a heck of a lot easier to park. Obviously these various cars and mopeds are parked sort of perpendicular instead of parallel. Even though these are parallel parking spaces, they are like 3 or 4 times as many of these vehicles that can park there. But what if you're younger than 14, or you can't hold a driver's license anymore, or you could never hold a driver's license? There's a lot of people out there, even adults. Well, your alternative is to get a bicycle. Actually, does that look like a bicycle? It's actually a Canta, but in the eyes of the law, it is a bicycle. It does not require any driver's license to operate. By the way, it's a fully enclosed motorized vehicle, even with a radio. And it can be driven in bike lanes. I mean, it has a top speed and everything, which makes it safe, but these are the ultimate accessibility device for someone, especially I've seen a lot of people get in and out of these that have mobility impairments, or they're wheelchair users and they put a wheelchair in the back. So it's just like the whole entire city has this sort of plethora of options that provide maximum accessibility. I saw these everywhere. What can you guys guess this is? Is this a
BMW i7?
Is this a car? No. Is this a car or a moped or a bicycle?
Moped.
It's actually a moped. That was just for fun. I see these mopeds and these Cantos parked everywhere in every nook and cranny of the city. They're in these narrow alleys, and they're in the red light district. So it's I think emblematic of like public policy that really focuses on the accessibility of the city for everyone, not just but everyone, but not at the expense of people who are walking or cycling and are subject to these larger vehicles, and also subject to like street designs that accommodate these larger vehicles, right? Okay, next section. Don't overbuild. This starts to get more into strong towns. And by the way, when I was in Amsterdam, I couldn't help but think about strong towns every single moment. That's just who I am.
As opposed to normal.
What's that?
I said as opposed to normal.
As opposed to normally? You're right. Okay, so we have here a pretty narrow road. It only is about 1 car width. So if there are 2 cars passing each other, they kind of have to share the space in where these are bumped out, and then the 2 cars can fit, right? But not everywhere. Now, let me ask, why do you guys think that the richest oil nation in Europe can't seem to afford or want to pay for a double width road here? Any guesses?
Discouragement of use.
Discouragement of use, okay.
Maintenance cost.
What's that?
Maintenance cost.
Maintenance cost. I think that's mainly what I wanted to get at. But
You
you
don't
haven't-
really want cars to use it.
Yeah, it's discourage of use. Yeah, exactly.
Floodplains?
What's that?
You like a lot of floodplains?
Floodplains? Yeah, potentially another reasons.
So they have more oil to sell to other people?
Exactly. That's the answer. No, I don't know. Yeah, you can see obviously there's a ditch here for flood management potentially. It might be an irrigation ditch as well. But the point is that this touches on a strong towns concept of rigorous accounting. In many ways, not just here, but you see the Netherlands seeming to underinvest in things, and it actually, I think, when you look at the policy that leads to these decisions, we find that it's really about the Netherlands and the cities of Amsterdam and Leiden and The Hague looking at its long-term accounting and deciding that the long-term maintenance is not worth it. And if you look anywhere in any of my pictures, I challenge any of you to find a pothole. You will not find any potholes. I think it's partly because they don't over-invest. They don't overbuild. Okay, here's another road that has higher throughput, more traffic on it. You can even see a car driving down it. This road I actually rode my bike for like 20 miles on, and I felt safe the whole time. But the point I want to bring up is that it's just wide enough for two cars to pass each other, and a decision was made here to emphasize and prioritize the bike lanes on the side and only give the scraps that are left in the center of the street to the motor vehicles, and the motorists are expected to drive down the center. If there's two passing each other, then they have to bump out into the bike lane. But I always felt safe riding my bike in these environments. And it gets really extreme. Sometimes they decide the width of the asphalt, and then they decide the bike lanes. And then what I mean by the scraps in the center, I mean really the scraps in the center. This is another road where cars are allowed to drive up and down, but it's so narrow that like they're only given one single foot of space. This ties back to a traffic engineering concept from the Netherlands, but also at Strong SacTown, we've sort of internalized in our street design working group. Designing from the outside in means focusing on the edges of the street first, and then whatever's left giving for the faster, more motorized traffic in the center. Okay, not overbuilding is extended to even the suburbs. In the suburbs, you have suburban driveways, and these driveways lead to hundreds of houses. This is an example of a driveway that's just wide enough for one car to fit on it, and that's good enough. And you'll see this pattern over and over again of the Dutch only doing what's good enough. Here's more of it, just hundreds and hundreds of houses that I passed with these super narrow driveways. People had these small cars, they didn't have pickup trucks. Okay, what's one small step better than trash bags on the ground? Trash bags on a hook. So, Strong Town's concept, next small step. If we can make this a little bit better, and we can do it now, and we can do it quick, then just do it. I saw a lot of these trash bags on a hook, and it was really kind of cool to see. I have more posts about trash that we'll see later. Talking about hooks, we saw a lot of hooks on buildings, and the reason for this is because the Dutch always carry their furniture in through the front window. They attach a pulley to the hook, and then the pulley moves the furniture. But does anybody know why they do this? Can anybody guess or anybody know?
Narrow stairs.
Narrow stairs?
No elevators.
No elevators?
So most of those row houses were originally built for the merchant class. So you had your business on the ground floor, you had living quarters, actually not living, but you stored all your crap.
Store your crap on top.
On the top. So if you can.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So if you were a dealer in imported silk or something like that, you stored your stock in the upper floors, and you lived in the lower floors.
Yeah, so the lower floor workshops would have their warehousing up top. But I think it also doesn't explain why they didn't have wide staircases, and I think you're getting into that, like, why do they have narrow staircases? It's safe space. Yeah, you have an idea?
Don't they like tax the width of the...
Exactly. Yeah, so, and it leads back to why are the buildings so narrow? The taxation policy for property in the Netherlands is a function only of the width of the building and not the depth or the height. So you want to make your building as narrow as possible, you pay the least amount of property taxes, and that has other side benefits for walkability, which I'll get into later. And here's an example of how narrow these staircases are. Don't overbuild your public urinals. They don't need 4 walls and a ceiling. You can just provide a little privacy and you're good to go. Okay, next section. Safe streets. Who can tell me in this picture of an intersection what makes this intersection safe? More than one answer. Bollards.
Cars have to go up.
It looks like there was a 30-kilometer speed limit earlier, which is not. It's not 40 miles an hour, so.
Yeah, there might be a difference of speed limits on the different roads. Yeah, Mike?
When the car cars enter the pedestrian space, they know it intuitively as they're going up onto the level of the pedestrian surface.
Yeah, there's an intuitive language for physically like expressing to motorists that they're entering a space in which they are the guest. And they are the guest in the realm of the pedestrian. Another answer?
The street's narrow.
And the streets are very narrow. That's another thing that slows down cars. And I'll get into that. So there's a couple of things that you'll notice. The sidewalk is continuous. The people walking don't have to dip down a ramp and then go back up a ramp. So what they've done is actually built up a pad of bricks and asphalt. And then also, it's necked down. You were talking about it being narrow. When an area is necked down, in this case with bollards, it constrains the space and forces motorists to drive a bit slower. And then also, the pavement is textured, and maybe Mike, you were getting at this, but the visual difference is important too. And it being a little bit textured also makes the car rumble a little bit and helps with that signaling. School zones everywhere in Amsterdam. These also had similar levels of treatment. In this case, it was just super necked down. And I usually go on and on about how much I don't like one-way streets here in Sacramento, but why don't I mind this one-way street?
Only one lane.
It's only one lane. So I don't mind. You have another answer?
It's narrower.
It also is pretty narrow. So you can't mistake it for being two-way. I took this picture in Leiden, but it's similar in a lot of other small streets in the Netherlands. You have a condition where you feel safe and people feel comfortable walking down the middle of the road because traffic is so slow. And as a result of all of these safety treatments, you don't actually need curbs. And so this extends into sort of the whole theme of like the city is accessible for everyone, even if you're a wheelchair user, even if you just it's difficult for you to mount a curb and dismount a curb. So I have seen all throughout every city I visited in the Netherlands, people crossing mid-block and it being so seamless because there's no curb to get on and off. Here's an interesting thing: as you're on a high-speed road and you're entering a low-speed neighborhood, they have this sort of paint thing. So this kind of ties back to the whole like don't overbuild, don't like next smallest step. What's like a simple thing you can do with paint? So this is like a forced perspective, right? Cyclists are always accounted for when it comes to construction detours. So if Sacramento had a construction detour policy, that would be great. They do.
You're there.
But it's not good enough. Who can tell me what makes this neighborhood intersection safe?
Is that a race crosswalk?
There is no sidewalk here, so there can't be a crosswalk. What's up?
The road bends.
The bends, that's a chicane, yeah. There is a bump, though. So first we'll talk about the chicane. As you approach the intersection, you can't go straight into it, so when you're forced to turn, it actually slows you down. There's a speed hump as well, so that's probably what you were alluding to as a crosswalk, but it's not. And then there's obviously also bollards that helps to narrow the street. Now, I'll show you more pictures, but you'll notice that in a lot of these, and actually in my time I spent even cycling in Amsterdam, I didn't spend a lot of time in bike lanes. Okay. At night, people feel safe cycling, so everyone does. And so did I. Okay, I have a little bit of cycling, bicycling trivia to go over. Okay, so first, just shout out what you think is the answer. So number one, what % of all trips are done by bicycle?
Here.
In Amsterdam. Not here.
75.
60?
Okay, you guys are like way overestimated. That's really close. 40 is close. It's 30 minutes. It turns out in Amsterdam, a lot of people walk, a lot of people take the train, and a lot of people drive. Oh, crap. The median trip distance is 2 miles, and I'll talk more about that later. Okay, in what decade do you guys think the first bike paths, the first like systematic construction of bike paths were embarked on in Amsterdam?
80.
You guys are 100 years old. Amsterdam isn't the only like European city that started doing this in the 1800s, but they were extremely systematic about it. Oh, crap. Okay. So I almost did it again. The 1970s movement that led to the mass construction of these bike lanes was called
Stop the Child Murder.
Stop the Child Murder. Man, you're quick. I think I was looking up per capita. Amsterdam had almost as many children in the U.S. today being murdered by cars at the time that this movement was embarked. So we're already well above the number that where we can start our own movement. Stop the child murder. This is a bike that I rented. It's 15 euros a day. I thought it was pretty cheap. And here's the Rijksmuseum. It's the largest museum in Amsterdam, and it has a bike street going right through the middle of it. It's a public street. Okay, let's pause on this. This is a strip mall. But all of the businesses in the strip mall are businesses that arguably you would need a car to get like stuff from, like boat masts and tires and stuff. And I think the point I wanted to convey here is that this is one of the only few bike lanes I really spent a lot of time in. The road next to it is a 50-kilometer-an-hour road, which is faster than would feel comfortable cycling in. And it's only in these places where bike lanes are guaranteed to see, right? You're not guaranteed to see a bike lane in the city center. You're only guaranteed to see them here, which is kind of the opposite of the US, where these are the places where there's no guarantee that a bike lane will exist, right? This ties back into the street versus road concept in strong towns. And when we have places that serve businesses and there are crosswalks, but also this street is really wide and really fast and designed like a highway, and there's no bike path alternative and there's no good sidewalk connection, we would call that in the US a stroad, because it's like a combination of street and road. But you'll never see those in Amsterdam. They're always streets or roads, nothing in between. Bikes are usually not parked to a fixed object, no bike racks. I mean, there are bike racks, but they're very rare. People just lock their bike to themselves and pull up the kickstand and Bob your uncle, and they go. And they come back and the bike's always there. I think it's related to the fact that there are more bikes than people there. Even big, expensive cargo bikes, people live in, they don't have garages, they live in apartments. They have to park their bike outside. Okay, who can tell me what kind of bike this is? What is the type of bike? Road bike?
Yeah.
What did the Dutch call it?
American bikes?
Street bike. Stripping faster?
A racing bike. I think it's important that they use that language as a distinction, because their roads are typically dominated by Dutch bikes or just normal bicycles. This is like for racing. Also, I wanted to highlight how kind of shittily it was locked. But it's okay, because all the other bikes around it weren't locked at all. Even if you were worried about where to park your bike at the train station, don't worry, there's over like 5,000 parking spots.
Good wayfinding too.
Yeah, good wayfinding.
Wait, do they leave them unlocked at the train station too?
Yeah, but there's an attendant.
Oh, okay.
And I did see people locking their bikes. It's actually a really interesting system, if I can just go off the side really quick. You go to the front where the attendant is, and you pick a number out of a box, and that number tells you where to park your bike, so that you never lose your bike. And then when you come back, you put your number back in the box, so the next person takes that number.
Wow.
It's really, and then if you get a number that's really far away, then you just keep picking new numbers until you walking around, you always pass light that somebody left on by accident. And at first I was like, oh, I should go turn that off. But after a while, you just let it be, because there's so many of them, and also it just becomes part of the city lights. Okay, let's get back to strong towns, guys. Focus. Okay. Bike lanes, sidewalks, buses, trains, infrastructure for people. These things lead to high rates of cycling, walking, and taking transit, which leads to productive land use and fiscal solvency, which leads to livability. This is strong towns in a nutshell. Okay? But I want to dissect this and break it down a little bit more, maybe even reverse some things that I think I don't agree with. So as I mentioned, I didn't see that many bike lanes and I didn't see that many sidewalks. I also didn't see, honestly, that many buses and trains. And when you look up those stats on Wikipedia, Sacramento has just as many lanes of bus line and light rail track per capita compared to Amsterdam. So in a way, we're building just as much of all these things. And if anything, we're building more miles of bike lane and sidewalk. So what gives? Why is it that we're building all this stuff and they're getting the results? What other factors do you think are at play? Anybody want to volunteer an idea? Yep.
Access to destinations.
Access, okay. So like proximity, maybe?
Density.
Safety. Being very hostile to cars.
Being hostile to cars, so like people searching for an alternative. I heard safety, I heard density. What's up?
I have a question about how rad are the car commercials in Holland? Maybe that's their.
I will say that I saw car commercials in India. I didn't see any car commercials in Amsterdam. Culture is another one. 1890, right? So deep culture. I have a hot raised hand.
Like diversity of transit modes.
Diversity of options, alternatives of transit modes, exactly. Okay, great ideas. And there's one in particular I want to focus on just because I'm running out of time. Trips in the Netherlands by mode and distance. This is kind of like what do people choose to do in the Netherlands based on their expected trip distance. And one thing that I want you guys to take away from this graph is that below about 2 miles, so a trip that's shorter than 2 miles, people will just naturally decide to walk or ride their bicycle. Anything longer, they'll take the train or they'll drive their car. When you look at the scale of cities in Amsterdam and the typical distances that people will take, you'll find that it's in this range. Now, who can tell me where the US lies approximately on this graph?
Half mile.
Half mile, like lower?
Yeah. For walkability?
No, on the, like, what is the average, the typical trip distance? How far would you have to go typically to go from your house to your...
No, much higher.
Much higher, right? Much higher. So that would be closer to this range. I have stats for Amsterdam, but I don't have it for this. So I just did like you live in South Natomas and you work in downtown. This is like what puts you in this range. So it really, for me, a lot of my focus ends up going towards density and proximity and advocating for that. And I saw a lot of that in Amsterdam. It's not just the density. I mean, we're density-wise, we're talking like 5 to 10 times denser than Sacramento, but also just the mixed use, like the ground floor is never wasted. It's never just a fence or like a blank wall. It's always something on the ground floor, right? And then getting back to the whole, why are the buildings so narrow? In this case, it's like this street just around the corner from my house still had all these super narrow buildings, and just in this one shot, this one wide angle shot, I was able to get in so many buildings, and I've drawn them out. But basically, the whole taxation scheme incentivizes the building as narrow as possible, and there's no law that says you have to have a gap between the buildings, so they are what we call attached, right? Attached buildings. Move it along. Granular urbanism, walking accelerator. This is what we call walking accelerator because you can go the same distance and walk past twice as many stores. You can get groceries, you can go do God things, and this is the same place painted. The alleys are even activated. There are people park their bikes there. They have shops open in the alleys. And the main streets are really the workhorse of the place, of the economy and of like life, really. And I want to talk really quick about some random stuff I ran into. So really interesting trash cans. Also, there were just so many trash cans and there was no trash anywhere, so I think those are related. Even the trash cans go in underground and they have to get picked up out of the ground and dumped. So there's a lot of videos on YouTube about that really interesting thing. Here's a close-up of the trash can above ground and underground portion. There's always people to watch because there's so many people, and because of the density, you constantly see people doing things, and then so it's a great place to people watch. In this case, people are just rowing in the water. Everyone lives in apartments there, so you practically, and you don't have a garage, you don't have off-street parking, so you practically have to charge on street. So they have all these on-street car charging kiosks. And one super important thing to me, and this is my last slide, access to nature. And I wanted to end it on this because people feel like when they go to places like New York City or wherever, like it's difficult for them to, it's easy to reach a city park, but it's difficult to reach a truly place of nature. And these are places that are scientifically proven to be so important for everyone, psychologically, physically, everything. And every city that I visited, Amsterdam, Leiden, and The Hague, they were surrounded by forest. And it wasn't just, farmland everywhere. They definitely have too much farmland, and they eat too much meat and all that stuff, but like the forest was always somewhat preserved right next to the city, and most people who live in these cities can walk and be in nature, which I think is really valuable. Oh, the sunsets are pretty, and thank you so much for listening.